The human won an off-grid cabin at an auction, only to discover a fierce alien warrior caged below. The truck's suspension groaned as Ethan navigated the final stretch of overgrown driveway, branches scraping paint he'd stopped caring about somewhere around mile marker 40. Dust hung in the afternoon light filtering through ponderosa pines, and he could taste the particular emptiness of a place that had forgotten human presence. Good. That was exactly what he'd paid for. Or rather, what he'd won at a foreclosure auction for less than his last month's rent in Seattle. The cabin materialized through the trees like something from a fever dream of escape. Single-story log construction gone gray with weather, windows dark, and 2 of them cracked. The auction photos had been optimistic at best, but Ethan had learned to measure value differently these days. No neighbors meant no one asking if he was okay. No sirens meant no flinching awake at 3 a.m. with his heart trying to punch through his ribs. No ambulance meant no ghosts of calls he couldn't save riding shotgun in his head. He killed the engine and sat in the sudden quiet, hands still gripping the wheel. 32 years old and running to the woods like a character from a story about men who couldn't handle civilization. His ex-girlfriend Sarah would have had thoughts about that. His former partner Luis definitely had thoughts about it, most of them expressed through increasingly concerned text messages Ethan had stopped answering 2 weeks ago. The cabin key was cold against his palm as he approached the front door. It stuck in the lock, corroded by mountain weather and neglect, but his shoulder against the warped wood solved that problem with a crack of protesting hinges. The interior smell hit him immediately. Mustiness and rot, expected, but underneath it something else. Something chemical and sharp, like a hospital corridor scrubbed with industrial cleaner. Ethan frowned, setting his backpack on a dust-covered table. The auction listing had mentioned the previous owner died intestate, property seized for unpaid taxes. Nothing about medical equipment or laboratories. But that smell didn't lie. He'd spent 6 years as an EMT. He knew the scent of disinfectant trying to cover something up. The main room yielded nothing unusual. Fireplace, ancient furniture, kitchen area with appliances from another decade. He moved through methodically, checking for structural damage, mold, anything that would make the place unlivable. The bedroom was clear. The bathroom's plumbing was shot but fixable. That left the basement. The door was newer than the rest of the house, steel reinforced, which seemed excessive for a storm cellar. The hinges didn't squeak when he opened it. Someone had maintained this recently, and Ethan's instincts, dulled by months of exhaustion but not dead, started whispering warnings he ignored because he'd driven 8 hours and he needed to know what he'd actually bought. The stairs descended into darkness that his phone's flashlight carved into stark white plains, concrete walls, too smooth and too new. The chemical smell intensified with each step, mixing with something else now, something organic and wrong. At the bottom, his light found a hallway stretching back under the cabin, and at the end, another door. This one required a keypad. Ethan tried the obvious codes, 00001234, the year on the deed. Nothing. He was about to give up when he noticed the panel's edge was loose, wires exposed where someone had tried to bypass it. He'd rewired his share of ambulance equipment in the field. This was cleaner, but the principle held. 3 minutes of careful work, and the lock disengaged with a hydraulic hiss that raised the hair on his neck. The room beyond stopped him cold. Medical equipment lined one wall, monitors, IV stands, cabinets marked with biohazard symbols in multiple languages. Surgical lights hung from the ceiling above an examination table fitted with restraints, but it was the far wall that emptied the air from his lungs. A cage, 10 feet square, reinforced steel with bars thick as his wrist, and inside it something that shouldn't exist. She was 7 feet of impossible, all lean muscle and alien grace, even unconscious on the cage floor. Her skin was the color of lavender twilight, smooth and faintly luminescent in his flashlight beam. Purple hair spilled across her shoulders in waves that looked too fluid, too alive. Electronic cuffs circled her wrists and ankles, pulsing with faint blue light in steady rhythm. Her face was turned away, but he could see the elegant point of one ear, the sharp line of her jaw. Ethan's training kicked in before his brain caught up. check for breathing, assess for injury, establish patient status. He moved closer to the bars, knelt, tried to get a better angle. That's when she moved. One moment unconscious, the next exploding toward him with a speed that sent him sprawling backward. She hit the bars with both hands, claws he hadn't noticed extending with metallic clicks, and the sound that came from her throat was pure predator. A snarl that resonated in his chest like bass notes from some alien instrument. Her eyes snapped open, and they were luminous violet without pupils, fixed on him with an intensity that felt like standing in front of a furnace. She spoke in a language that sounded like melody wrapped around broken glass, and though he didn't understand the words, the meaning was clear in every line of her body. "Stay back. Don't touch me. I'll kill you if you try." Ethan raised his hand slowly, heart hammering but EMT instincts taking over. This was a patient. Scared, trapped, defensive. The specifics didn't matter. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, keeping his voice level, non-threatening. "I don't know who put you here, but I'm not with them. My name is Ethan. I just bought this place. I didn't know you were down here." She cocked her head, those alien eyes narrowing, studying him, measuring every micro-expression. Her breathing was fast, shallow. Fear response. He recognized it even across species. Her body trembled despite the aggressive posture, and he could see now how thin she was, ribs visible under that strange, luminescent skin. How long had she been here? He spotted a tablet on the equipment table, screen cracked but functional. When he picked it up, she tensed, claws digging into the bars but didn't attack. The device unlocked with a swipe, and what he found in the open files made his stomach turn. Property log, Ashir specimen number 1, Dr. Helena Cross, principal investigator. 5 years of entries. Clinical notes about tissue harvesting cycles, regenerative response testing, neurological stress mapping. Each entry more detached than the last, reducing the being in that cage to data points and hypotheses. There were photos, her strapped to that table, electrodes attached to her skin, her eyes wide and desperate. Videos he couldn't bring himself to open. This wasn't research. It was torture with a laboratory veneer. Ethan set the tablet down carefully and looked at her. She was watching him, head still tilted, and something in her expression had shifted. Not trust, nothing close to trust, but maybe recognition that his horror was genuine. "I'm going to get you out," he said. She barked something in her language, harsh and warning, then switched to broken English, each word forced. "Leave, human, before they return." But his hands were already moving to the electronic panel beside the cage, fingers working through the interface with the same stubborn focus that had gotten him through every impossible call, every patient he'd refused to give up on, even when protocol said to call it. He wasn't leaving. Not when someone needed help. Not when he could finally do something that mattered. The lock disengaged with a hiss. The cage door swung open. She collapsed forward onto her knees, free but unable to run, her body shaking with exhaustion and something that looked like disbelief. Ethan moved on instinct, catching her shoulders as she pitched forward, steadying her with hands that had held too many broken people not to be gentle. She didn't pull away. For a moment they stayed frozen like that, his hands on her shoulders, her face inches from his chest, both of them breathing hard. Then she looked up, and their eyes met at close range, his hazel eyes still wide with concern, her luminous violet ones swimming with confusion, and the first fragile flicker of something that might, given time, become hope. Neither spoke. The moment stretched between them, heavy with a weight neither understood, but both felt like gravity shifting beneath their feet. In 5 years, no human had touched her without bringing pain. In 6 months, Ethan hadn't touched anyone without flinching from his own failure. But here, in a bunker that stank of suffering and antiseptic, something began that neither could name, a connection that would redefine freedom for both of them, starting with this, the first time in too long that either had felt less alone. Kaelsira didn't trust the stairs. She took them sideways, back pressed to the concrete wall, those luminous eyes tracking Ethan's every movement as he led her up from the bunker. When they reached the main floor and daylight hit her skin, she flinched, turning her face away as if the sun itself was a weapon she'd forgotten how to face. Ethan gave her space, watching as she moved through the cabin like a predator surveying new territory. She tested the floorboards with her bare feet, ran her fingers along the window frames, checked sight lines to every exit. Her movements were economical and controlled despite the weakness he could see in the slight tremor of her legs. When she finally settled in the corner farthest from the door, she sank down with her back against the wall and didn't take her eyes off him. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "I mean, beyond—" He gestured vaguely at her, at the electronic cuffs still pulsing around her wrists, at the visible evidence of captivity written across her too thin frame. She said nothing, just watched him with that unsettling intensity that made him feel like a specimen under glass. Right. Language barrier, and probably trauma that went deeper than anything he'd seen in 6 years of emergency medicine. He held up his hands, moved slowly to the kitchen area, and started opening cabinets. Most were empty, but he found a few cans of soup, some crackers sealed in plastic. He held them up, raised his eyebrows in question. Kaelsira's gaze dropped to the food, and for the first time, something other than suspicion crossed her face. Hunger, raw and undeniable. She nodded once, sharp and controlled. Ethan heated the soup on the propane stove, poured it into 2 bowls, and set one on the floor midway between them. He retreated to the opposite side of the room and ate his own portion, deliberately casual, letting her make the choice. After a long moment, she moved forward in a crouch, snatched the bowl, and retreated to her corner. She ate with her fingers, ignoring the spoon, and the sound she made when the first bite hit her tongue was something between a gasp and a sob. They fell into an uneasy routine over the next 3 days. Ethan converted the bedroom into recovery space, dragging in the mattress and extra blankets he'd brought in the truck. Kaelsira claimed it immediately, always positioning herself between him and the door, always sleeping in short bursts, with one ear angled toward any sound. He took the couch, though he barely slept, partly because it was too short for his frame, mostly because he kept expecting to wake up to those claws at his throat. But she didn't attack. She ate what he offered, drank the water he brought, and watched him with decreasing hostility and increasing confusion. On the second day, she spoke. "Why?" The word was rough, her accent turning the simple syllable into something musical and strange, but it was English. Ethan looked up from the stove where he was heating more soup. They'd gone through his limited supplies fast, and he'd need to make a supply run soon. "Why what? Why free me?" She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over her chest. Without the cage between them, he could see her properly. The elegant lines of her face, the way her purple hair caught the light, the predatory grace in every shift of her weight. She was beautiful in a way that didn't translate across species, something that bypassed his brain entirely and registered somewhere more primal. "Because you needed help," he said. "Humans do not help, Ashir. This human does." She studied him for a long moment, head tilted in that considering way she had. "You are damaged." It wasn't a question, and the clinical accuracy of it startled a laugh out of him. "Yeah, probably." "What broke you?" Ethan turned back to the soup, stirring it with more focus than necessary. "I was an EMT, emergency medical technician. I helped people when they were hurt or sick, got them to hospitals. There was a call about 8 months ago. Kid, maybe 7 years old. Fell through ice on a frozen lake. By the time we got him out..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I did everything right. Textbook response. It didn't matter." "The child died." "Yeah. And you believe this was your failure?" "I couldn't save him." Kaelsira made a sound that might have been derision or understanding. "Warriors do not win every battle. This does not make them failures. It makes them warriors." He looked at her, and she met his gaze steadily. For the first time since finding her, Ethan felt something other than guilt in his chest, something that might have been the beginning of being seen. She pushed off the doorframe and moved closer, each step deliberate. When she reached him, she held out her wrists, the electronic cuffs still pulsing their faint blue rhythm. "Can you remove these?" Ethan examined them carefully, noting the integration with her skin, the way the light pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "I think so, but I need to understand how they work first." If I just cut them off, they might hurt you. They already hurt me. They suppress my biology, make healing slow, make me weak. Then we'll figure it out, together. She absorbed this, then nodded once. Over the next hours, they worked in tandem. Ethan using tools from his truck, Kaelsira explaining in halting English what she remembered about the cuff's mechanisms. She taught him words in her language, Shakan for blood, Tiresh for pain, Kelvar for freedom. He corrected her English pronunciation, and she corrected his attempts at Ashir words with something that might have been amusement in the slight curve of her mouth. When the first cuff came off, her gasp was sharp and immediate. Light rippled across her lavender skin in patterns he'd never seen before, bioluminescence cascading down her arm like water. She cradled her freed wrist against her chest, breathing hard, and those glowing patterns intensified before she seemed to force them down, fading until her skin was merely luminescent again. "What was that?" Ethan asked. "Emotion. My people show feeling through light. I thought I had forgotten how." By evening, all 4 cuffs lay discarded on the floor, and Kaelsira looked different, stronger, more present. She moved through the cabin with renewed energy, though she still favored her corner when night fell. Ethan made dinner from the last of his supplies, and they ate together in silence that felt less hostile than companionable. "Tell me about your people," he said eventually. Kaelsira set down her bowl, pulling her knees to her chest in a gesture that made her look smaller, younger. "We are Ashir, matriarchal, warrior caste trained from youth. I was mid-tier when they took me. Not elder, not novice, capable." Her voice roughened on the last word. "I was on colony ship. Escort duty. Pirates raided us. I fought. I lost." "How many years ago?" 5 of your years, sold to Cross, brought here, caged." She said it flatly, but her fingers dug into her arms, claws emerging slightly. "My mentor, Shenka, taught me that warriors protect the weak. That strength without compassion makes us beasts. I believed her. Then I met humans who proved her wrong about which species understands mercy." "Not all humans are like Cross. You are the first to prove this." The weight of that statement settled between them. Ethan opened his mouth to respond when Kaelsira suddenly tensed, head snapping toward the window. Her pupils, he realized she had them now, they'd just been dilated into invisibility before, contracted to slits. "What is it?" "Engines, multiple vehicles coming fast." Ethan crossed to the window and saw the headlights sweeping through the trees, still distant but approaching quickly. His heart kicked into overdrive. "We need to go. Now." "No," Kaelsira rose in one fluid motion, moving to the door. "You go. I will not run again." "Like hell. You think I freed you just to let them take you back?" She turned, and the look on her face was something between gratitude and grief. "You cannot fight them, Ethan. You are one human, unarmed, untrained for this." Then we're both stupid together. The vehicles roared into the clearing, and the door exploded inward before either could move. Men in tactical gear flooded the cabin with military efficiency. 4, 5, 6 of them, weapons raised. Ethan saw the lead man's face, Latino, late 20s, with a scar running temple to jaw, and registered the tranquilizer rifle aimed at Kaelsira. He didn't think. He threw himself between her and the gun. The dart hit him in the chest with a soft thump that felt absurdly gentle. The world tilted sideways, Kaelsira's roar of fury filling his ears as his legs gave out. He felt her catch him, felt the impossible strength in her arms as she lifted him, and his last conscious thought before the darkness took him was the fierce protectiveness in her luminous eyes, the look of someone who'd just found something worth keeping, and the realization that she'd chosen him over escape. Cold woke him, not the clean cold of mountain air, but the damp, mineral cold of stone that had never seen sun. Ethan's eyes opened to darkness, so complete he thought for a moment he'd gone blind, then caught the faint phosphorescence somewhere to his left, bioluminescent patterns tracing gentle spirals across lavender skin. Memory crashed back. The cabin, the mercenaries, the tranquilizer dart. He tried to sit up and discovered warmth surrounding him. Her body curved around his like a shield, one arm draped across his chest, her breath steady against the back of his neck. She'd positioned him on the inside, herself between him and whatever lay beyond in the darkness. "You're awake," she said softly, and he felt her shift, giving him space but not distance. "How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck made of cotton and regret." His voice came out rough, throat dry. "Where are we?" "Cave system, 2 miles northeast of the cabin. I scouted it on the second day." She moved away completely now, and he heard the sound of water, then felt her press something cold and wet against his lips, fabric soaked in water. He drank gratefully. "You were unconscious for 6 hours. I carried you." 6 hours. 2 miles of rough terrain while carrying a full-grown man, evading armed pursuers. Ethan pushed himself upright, head spinning. "Are you hurt?" "No." A pause. "One of them tried to tranquilize me. I broke his arm. The others focused on containment rather than engagement after that." "Smart of them. I am sorry you were hit. That dart was meant for me." "Yeah, well." Ethan rubbed his chest where the impact point still ached. "Seemed like a bad idea at the time. Still seems like a bad idea, but I'd do it again." Light flared suddenly, bioluminescent patterns blazing across her skin in waves that illuminated the cave in soft violet radiance. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read, those luminous eyes wide. The patterns faded slowly, and when she spoke, her voice was quieter. "You risked your life for mine. You carried me 2 miles through hostile territory. I'd say we're even." "We are not." She turned away, and he could see the cave properly now in the residual glow from her skin. A natural chamber, maybe 20 feet across, with a narrow entrance and water trickling down one wall. "Asher, do not forget debts, especially debts of life." "I don't want you to owe me anything, Kaelsira. That is not how bonds work." She faced him again, and her expression was fierce. "You do not understand what you did. In my culture, when someone saves another's life at risk to their own, when they choose protection over self-preservation, it creates eshtal, blood bond. You are pack now, whether you want to be or not." Ethan processed this, trying to reconcile warrior culture with the woman who'd spent 3 days in a corner afraid to sleep. "Is that why you came back for me? Because of some cultural obligation?" "No." The word was sharp enough to cut. "I came back because—" She stopped, claws extending and retracting in visible agitation. "Because the thought of leaving you to them felt like dying. Because in 3 days you showed me more respect than 5 years of captivity. Because when I carried you, I realized I could not remember the last time I touched someone without violence or restraint, and your weight in my arms felt like coming home." The silence that followed was profound. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, the drip of water on stone, the slight shift of her breathing. "I'm not running," he said finally. "From this, from you, from any of it. I'm not that guy anymore, the one who gives up when things get hard." "Then you are a fool." But there was no heat in it, and when she moved closer, settling beside him with their shoulders nearly touching, it felt like an answer to a question neither had asked. "They will hunt us. Cross has resources, contracts. She will not stop until she has me back in that cage." "Then we need to contact someone. Police, FBI, someone." Kaelsira laughed, bitter and musical. "Human law failed me before, Ethan. Cross has credentials, connections. She had me registered as salvage from unauthorized colonial activity. Property, not person. Who will believe an alien's word over a respected scientist, especially when my existence violates treaties your government signed to prevent interspecies contact?" "There has to be someone." "There is no one. This is why I told you to leave me." She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "You cannot help me. You can only die trying." "What if I told you I know someone?" Ethan pulled out his phone, miraculously still in his pocket, and checked the battery. 12%. "My former partner, Luis. He's FBI now. If I explain what's happening, he will think you are insane, or worse, he will report you. I am illegal, Ethan. My presence here violates law. You harboring me makes you criminal." "Then I'm a criminal." He started typing out a message, keeping it vague. "Need info on Dr. Helena Cross. Urgent. Don't call, just send what you can find." Kaelsira watched him work, something complicated crossing her face. "You would risk this for me." "Yeah, I would." He hit send, then powered down the phone to preserve battery. "We'll wait a day, see what Luis sends back. If there's any leverage against Cross, financial irregularities, legal violations, anything, we use it." And if there is nothing? Then we run. Canada's not far. We figure it out from there. She was quiet for a long moment, then reached out and took his hand, her fingers long and elegant, warm despite the cave's chill. In my culture, bondmates are chosen through shared survival, through trust earned in crisis, through seeing each other in vulnerability and choosing to stay. Her thumb traced across his knuckles, deliberate and gentle. I am choosing to stay. Ethan's breath caught. He understood what she was offering, the weight of it. I'm choosing to stay too. The bioluminescent patterns rippled across her skin again, softer this time, like light through water. She lifted his hand and pressed it to her cheek, closing her eyes. Thank you for seeing me, not as specimen or property, as person. They sat like that for a while, her face against his palm, his other hand finding hers. Outside, night birds called to each other, and somewhere distant, an engine growled through the forest. But in the cave, with stone around them and her warmth beside him, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months. His phone buzzed once, message received. He powered it on carefully, and they read Luis's response together in the phone's pale glow. Cross is connected to Helix Biotech, under investigation for illegal xenobiological research. No official records of specimens, though. Be careful. This company has lawyers that eat people for breakfast. Kale Sira read it twice, then looked at him. Illegal research, that is something. It's a start. Ethan's mind was already working, planning. If we can prove what she did to you. The sound of footsteps on gravel froze them both. Kelsira moved like lightning, positioning herself between Ethan and the cave entrance, claws extended, but the voice that called out was familiar. Ethan, it's Javier Soto. I'm alone and unarmed. I need to talk. The man from the cabin, the one with the scar. Ethan started to stand, but Kelsira's hand on his chest stopped him. It could be trap. Could be, but he's identified himself. If this was an ambush, they'd just come in shooting. Ethan raised his voice. Come forward slowly, hands where we can see them. Javier appeared at the cave entrance, hands raised, palms empty. In the bioluminescent glow from Kale Sira's skin, his face looked haggard, the scar across his jaw standing out stark white. His eyes found Kale Sira and held there, and Ethan saw something like shame cross his features. I read the logs, Javier said quietly. Everything Cross did, 5 years of... He stopped, jaw working. I've done a lot of questionable things for money, but this is different. She wants me to bring you back by any means necessary. She's authorized lethal force if needed, against both of you. And you came to tell us this out of the goodness of your heart? Kale Sira's voice was cold enough to frost glass. I came because I've got a daughter. She's 8, and if someone ever did to her what was done to you... Javier's hands clenched into fists, then relaxed. I can't be part of this. Cross's team is regrouping. They'll be back at the cabin by dawn, and they'll start a grid search from there. You've got maybe 6 hours to get clear. Why should we trust you? Ethan asked. You shouldn't, but I've got a vehicle parked half a mile south. Keys in the ignition, supplies in the back. If you head northwest, there's an old logging road that'll get you to the border in 3 hours. He pulled something from his pocket, a USB drive, and set it on the cave floor. Copy of all the bunker data, everything cross-documented. Maybe it's enough to burn her, maybe it's not, but it's yours. He started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, she's lucky you got out. 5 years and she never broke you. That takes strength I've only seen in soldiers. He nodded once to Kelsira, then melted back into the darkness. Kelsira stared at the cave entrance for a long moment, then at the USB drive, then at Ethan. He could be leading us into trap. Yeah, but he also could be a man whose conscience just woke up. Ethan picked up the drive, turned it over in his hands. We need to move either way. Question is, do we risk taking his help? She studied his face, and he could see her weighing variables, calculating odds. Then she reached out and pressed her forehead to his, that gesture of profound trust she'd mentioned before. I trust your judgment. If you say we take his help, we take his help. Even though he's one of the people who hunted you? Even though. She pulled back, and her eyes were steady on his. Because you taught me that humans are capable of change, that one person's cruelty does not define the species. You showed me compassion when I expected none. Perhaps he can change too. They gathered what little they had and left the cave together, Kelsira's hand in his. As they picked their way through the darkness toward Javier's promised vehicle, Ethan realized something fundamental had shifted. They weren't just running anymore. They were moving forward, together, towards something that might actually be freedom. And for the first time since losing that child on the frozen lake, Ethan believed he might actually save someone who needed saving, starting with himself. The vehicle was exactly where Javier said it would be, a black SUV with enough supplies in the back to suggest genuine defection. Ethan found protein bars, water, a first aid kit, and a hunting rifle with ammunition. Kelsira examined the weapon with practiced efficiency. He gives us means to fight. This suggests either remorse or sophisticated trap. Only one way to find out. Ethan started the engine while Kelsira folded herself into the passenger seat. They pulled onto the narrow logging road heading northwest toward the Canadian border. They drove in tense silence, watching mirrors for pursuit. After an hour, Kelsira spoke quietly. "Tell me what happens if we reach border, if we escape." "I don't know. We figure it out." "You would leave your world for me? Become fugitive?" Ethan glanced at her, then back to the road. "I spent 6 months running from everything that mattered. You spent 5 years in a cage and didn't break. If you can survive that and still choose trust, then yeah, I'm choosing you." Bioluminescent patterns flared across her skin, bright enough to illuminate the SUV's interior. She reached across and took his hand, intertwining their fingers. The gesture felt like a promise neither needed to speak. The road narrowed to a bottleneck, steep rock faces on both sides barely wide enough for one vehicle. Ethan's instincts screamed warning. He slowed to a crawl. Spotlights hit them. 3 vehicles blocked the pass ahead, armed figures emerging with military precision. Ethan slammed into reverse, but headlights flared behind them too. Boxed in. "Out," Kelsira said, already moving. "Fighting inside gives them advantage." They emerged into cool mountain air. Ethan grabbed the rifle while Kelsira moved to his side, body tense and ready. The armed figures advanced, but one stayed back, illuminated by spotlight. A woman in a tailored suit that looked absurd in the wilderness. "Dr. Helena Cross." Her voice carried across the pass with clinical precision. "Mr. Reese, you've caused considerable trouble over a property dispute. Specimen, return voluntarily, and Mr. Reese lives. Resist, and he becomes collateral damage." Kelsira's claws extended with metallic clicks. "I have name. I am not specimen." "You're salvage from illegal colonial activity. No legal standing, no rights. You're research material." Cross's smile was cold. "Valuable, but replaceable." "She's a person," Ethan said, raising the rifle. His hands were steady. "And I've got evidence of everything you did. 5 years of torture in your own words. That USB drive is already in transit to the FBI." It was a bluff. The drive was in his pocket, but Cross's expression flickered. "Empty threats from a felon. You assaulted my security, destroyed my facility, stole government property." She gestured, and mercenaries advanced. "Last chance. Walk away with money and immunity, or die for an animal that will never be free." Ethan felt Kelsira's hand find his free one, fingers lacing together. He lowered the rifle slightly and looked at Cross with something like pity. "You see an animal. I see someone who survived hell and still believes compassion matters. You see property. I see the person who taught me that running from pain doesn't fix it, but standing beside someone in theirs might mean something." He squeezed Kelsira's hand. "So no, you want her, you go through me." Cross's expression went flat. She nodded and mercenaries raised weapons. Then Javier's voice cut through the night. "Federal agents, weapons down!" Headlights blazed from above. Figures in FBI tactical gear rappelled down the rock face with practiced efficiency. Luis was among them, Ethan's former partner, older but wearing the same focused expression. More agents appeared from the forest, suddenly outnumbering Cross's mercenaries 3-1. Javier emerged from behind Cross's vehicles, hands raised. "I made the call. I've been embedded in this operation for 3 weeks, gathering evidence for the investigation into Helix Biotech's illegal xenobiological trafficking." Cross spun on him, fury cracking her facade. Had a crisis of conscience. Yeah. Javier's expression was hard. Started when I read what you did to her. Finished when I realized my daughter would be ashamed of who I'd become. Luis moved through the scene with quiet authority. When he reached Ethan, his expression was carefully neutral. You look like hell, partner. Feel like it too, Ethan gestured. Luis, this is Kale Sierra, Luis Mendoza, one of the good ones. Luis studied her with professional assessment. Ma'am, we'll need statements, but first. He turned to Cross, being restrained by agents. Dr. Helena Cross, you're under arrest for violations of the Interspecies Protection Act, illegal detention, torture, and about 15 other charges. Cross spat at Ethan with pure venom. You've destroyed your life for nothing. She's alien. They'll deport her or dissect her or lock her away. You've saved nothing. Kale Sierra stepped forward, and when she spoke, her English was perfect and measured. You kept me caged for 5 years. You tried to break me through pain. You failed. I survived because my mentor taught me that true strength is choosing compassion even when cruelty is easier. This human showed me her teachings were correct, that even among species that hunted mine, there are those who understand honor. She turned back to Cross. You are the animal, not me, and I will testify to ensure you never cage another living being. Cross was led away, still protesting. Luis pulled Ethan aside. Hell of a situation, partner. Good news is, Helix Biotech's been under investigation for months. Cross's arrest gives us leverage to shut down their trafficking network. Bad news is Kale Sierra's legal status is complicated. Ethan's stomach dropped. What does that mean? We need to contact her people. There's an interstellar council that handles this. If her people want her back, they have the right to retrieve her. The weight hit Ethan like a physical blow. Of course, she had a home, a culture, people searching for her. What was he compared to that? 3 weeks later, after bureaucratic grinding and diplomatic negotiations, Luis found them in the federal facility's common area. Asher delegation is here. They've been searching for colony ship survivors for 5 years. They want to see you, Kale Sierra. Her bioluminescence flared so bright it lit the room. My people came. Conference room 3, whenever you're ready. She stood, then looked at Ethan. Come with me. That's probably not appropriate. You are Pack, you come. In the conference room, 3 Asher waited, tall and elegant with varying shades of blue and purple skin. One stepped forward, older with silver-white hair and deep indigo skin. Kale Sierra, daughter of Shenka's teaching, we mourned you as lost. To find you living brings honor to your mentor's memory. Kale Sierra responded in rapid Ashir, grief and joy mixing in her voice. The elder listened, then pulled her into an embrace involving touching foreheads, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing. When they separated, the elder's gaze found Ethan. You are the human who freed her. Yes, ma'am. She speaks of you as Eshtal, bondmate. This is significant. Ethan glanced at Kale Sierra, who met his eyes steadily. It's true. He saved my life at risk to his own. He showed me compassion when I expected cruelty. He is Pack. The elder studied him for a long moment. Our laws are clear. Any who claim bondmate right must be honored, regardless of species. If you return with our delegation, Kale Sierra, he would be welcome as well, the first human to receive such honor. The world tilted. Leave Earth, step into the unknown. It was impossible. It was everything he wanted. But Kale Sierra was shaking her head. I must discuss this with him privately. Outside in the facility's courtyard, Montana sky vast overhead, Kale Sierra stood staring at emerging stars. Ethan could see her searching among constellations for home. You should go, he said quietly. Your people came for you. You deserve to go home. She turned, expression fierce. Do you want me to go? I want you to be happy, free, with your people. That is not what I asked. She closed the distance, taking his face in her hands. Do you choose me, Ethan? Knowing I am alien, that my home is among stars you cannot name, that my people will judge you for being human? Do you choose me despite all this? His hands covered hers. I choose you every time, but I can't ask you to give up your home. You are not asking, I am choosing. Bioluminescent patterns cascaded across her skin. You freed me. You showed me trust is not weakness. You stood between me and danger when you could have walked away. You taught me that home is not location. It is person. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft at first, then deeper as he responded, his arms wrapping around her waist, her hands threading through his hair. It tasted like hope and choice, and the terrifying possibility of building something new. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. There is tradition among my people. When bondmates choose each other, they speak vow. 2 words. Eshtal Kelvar, bondmate freedom. It means, in choosing you, I am free. In being chosen, you are home. Eshtal Kelvar, Ethan repeated carefully. Eshtal Kelvar, she said with him. Light patterns blazed across her skin, outshining the stars, and Ethan felt something fundamental settle into place, the sense that he'd been wandering lost and had suddenly found his way home. 3 months later, Ethan stood on an Ashir ship orbiting Earth, looking down at the planet that had been his entire world. The ship was elegant and organic, all curved surfaces and integrated systems. Around him, Ashir moved with graceful efficiency, and he was learning their language, learning what it meant to be pack. Kelsira appeared beside him, hand finding his automatically. She wore ceremonial armor, marking her as warrior returned, bondmate claimed, survivor honored. She'd regained her strength, and the way she moved was pure confidence and deadly grace. Nervous, she asked. Terrified I'm the only human here. You are not human here. You are my Eshtal, my chosen bondmate. She squeezed his hand. The elders will want your testimony about Cross, about human trafficking of our people. This will help prevent future raids. And after, we build life, together. She turned him to face her. I know this is not easy, leaving your world, learning new culture, but you taught me something in that bunker. Freedom is not about where you are, it is about who chooses to stand beside you. Below them, Earth rotated in slow majesty. Somewhere down there was the cabin, the cave, the pass where he'd stood between her and Cross's weapons. Somewhere was the EMT he'd been, running from pain he couldn't fix. But that person felt distant now. I don't regret it, he said. Any of it. You were right. You're not just bondmate, you're home. Patterns on her skin glowed soft and warm. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. Around them, other Ashir passed with respectful nods, accepting him because she had claimed him. Standing there, looking down at Earth from orbit, Ethan finally understood what freedom meant. It wasn't escaping the cage or the calls he'd failed. It wasn't running to the woods or hiding from pain. Freedom was choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It was standing beside someone in their darkest moment and saying, I'm here. It was the terrifying and beautiful act of being seen completely and choosing to be seen anyway. Kelsira had survived 5 years of hell believing compassion mattered more than cruelty. She'd chosen him when she could have chosen escape. She'd taught him that warriors don't give up on battles worth fighting. And he'd taught her that not all humans are monsters, that some are broken and trying to heal, that the capacity for cruelty and compassion can exist in the same person, and it's the choice between them that matters. They stood together at the viewport, 2 survivors who'd found each other in darkness, and decided to build something new in the light. The ship prepared for transit to Ashir space, and Ethan took one last look at Earth before turning his full attention to the woman beside him. His future, his choice, his home,